Hello, guys. Welcome to another exciting episode on the show. Control or Be Controlled, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Talentin. Today's guest is Raye Breaker. Raye, welcome to Control or Be Controlled.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me as a guest.
All right, so I would like you to introduce yourself to my audience.
I'm a 30-year veteran entrepreneur, been on 2 continents, built businesses, listed businesses on 2 continents. And in 2013, while training for a marathon, I had a major health scare because I had 2 blocked arteries, and that changed the direction for me of where I wanted to go. I'd spent a lot of time on stage talking about finance and mortgages, and I decided I really wanted to talk about what makes business successful and what makes business hum. And so that was my major shift in 2013. And I still own my financial services business, but I spend more time on the road as a professional speaker talking about optimism and optimistic leadership.
You have had an incredible journey, from being 6,000 feet underground in a mine to becoming a global entrepreneur and professional speaker. Can you take us through that journey and the lessons each chapter taught you?
So, yeah, I mean, as an engineer, I worked underground on mines in South Africa, and it was in the days of apartheid in South Africa. So as a white male, you're fairly privileged in terms of the job opportunities that you had. But I started learning leadership lessons early on while working on the mines. I started learning lessons there, about how to be a leader and how to be an approachable leader. And then I applied those businesses. So in 1990, I started my first business. It was the year Nelson Mandela was released. Madiba was released from jail. It was the year the African National Congress was unbanned. And we started a business. We radically pivoted that business after 6 months, started an education business that grew to 4,000 students over 6 campuses. And then we reversed that into a stock exchange company, bought companies for that listed entity. And then I moved to Australia in the late 90s, and I ended up starting a new business in Australia in 2001 in financial services, which I still own today. And I spent a lot of time. I've sold over $1 billion of mortgages from stage in that business. And then in 2013, the health scare really took me to a different focus of talking about business and business success, and rather than just how to invest and how to retire on your properties.
Okay, thank you so much. So in 2013, while training for a marathon, you discovered you had 2 blocked arteries. How did that experience change the way you view success, health, and purpose?
I guess it made me introspective in that most men, and I say men because our egos get in the way, most men don't really understand their own mortality, don't really understand listening to the signs of their body. And that's what I've learned over the last 13 years, is to listen to my body, listen to what my body is telling me about my state of mind. And that was really the biggest lesson that I got out of that, was just being aware of the signs and symptoms that your body's giving you, and not panicking necessarily, just being aware of them and doing something else. Like that's, changing direction because your body's giving you a message.
All right, thank you so much. So many people believe entrepreneurs are either born with certain traits or they are not. Do you believe entrepreneurship can be learned and developed?
No, I don't. I believe you can learn to be a manager. You can learn to be a leader. But I think entrepreneurship at its core has a risk profile. And I think that you can learn all the skills about leading people and running a business. I think the core understanding of risk and the amount of risk you have to take as an entrepreneur, I think that is the thing that you are born with. You're either a risk averse person or a risk taking person. And if you're a risk taking person, then entrepreneurship kind of fits in with that profile. If you are a person who's totally risk averse and you don't like taking risks, well, then, it comes down to, if you're not prepared to take risks, then entrepreneurship or the life of the entrepreneur is probably not the right thing for you.
Okay. So what mistakes do you see leaders making when they try to grow their business?
There's, how long do we have? Do we have 3 or 4 hours to talk about those mistakes? But the answer is, the biggest mistake people make is not taking their team along on the journey. So a lot of my time on stage now, I talk about the RISE model. And the first one is really about raising a vision. And that's about being able to take your team on the journey with you. And taking your team on the journey with you means being aware of how you communicate the vision. So I always say to leaders, can you close your eyes and imagine where the business is going and where you'd like it to be? And once you've done that, open your eyes and explain to the people around you where you saw the business going, where you saw it happening. And then the most important thing is then articulate what steps you took from before you closed your eyes to when you opened your eyes again. What steps do you have to take to get to that vision? And I think that's the problem, is that's the one. And the other big thing that constrains growth and actually damages growth is entrepreneurs, by their very nature, are control freaks. I was one, where you want to control everything and make sure it works. There's a chapter in my book called Give Up Control to Gain Control, which is very much aligns with the title of this podcast. And giving up control to gain control means empowering your team to do things and giving them the responsibility and the trust. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is telling the team that you trust them. And if they mess up, okay, they mess up. It doesn't matter. In the big scheme of life and things, it doesn't matter. And so it is about empowering your team members. And a lot of leaders don't do that. They try and micromanage people. And when you micromanage people, you disenfranchise them. You don't give them the power to make decisions. On social media recently, I commented on the Ritz-Carlton group, and there's lots of posts on social media at the moment about how the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Group, the CEO in 40 years ago, 50 years ago, told team members they could spend up to $2,000 without asking for permission to make clients happy. And that's empowerment. He empowered his staff to do the right thing to keep their client base happy. And I think that's what it's about. It's about empowering your staff. You don't have to tell them to spend money, but it's about empowering your staff to do the right thing when you're not watching. And that's what it means. I think that's the biggest challenge for growth, is you have to actually employ people, trust them enough to do the job that you've employed them for, and then let them go out and do it.
Okay. So, moving on. How has becoming a professional speaker changed your own life? And what impact can learning to communicate effectively have on entrepreneurs and leaders?
So there's multiple answers to that. I have always been on stage. So I was speaking from the age of 15. At the age of 20, I was the champion Toastmaster in South Africa, and my mortgage business was built. My education business in South Africa and my mortgage business in Australia were all built by me being on stage and talking to audiences. So I've always been comfortable talking to audiences. It changed my life because I switched from just talking about technical stuff to talking about the things that have made me successful. And I put that into a context. It's not about me. It's about how do the lessons that I learned, how do they apply to the people in my audience? And how can people in the audience use those lessons to be successful? So that's the broad skill of it. I think and one of the things I teach is something called communicating in full color. And it's about understanding your own behavior and understanding the behavior of the people around you and how to efficiently communicate with those people around you. And so, extending that idea, entrepreneurs really need to have the skill. And sometimes it means going for speaker coaching, not formal speaker coaching, but as an entrepreneur, and you should be passionate about what you do and passionate about leading your team. And that passion needs to show every time you open your mouth. And so sometimes, I get the entrepreneur, oh no, I'm too scared to stand in front of 10 people and talk to them or 20 people and talk to them. I think that's what people need to be coached for. I think if you're too scared to do it, you can go to coaching and go to coaches that will solve that problem for you. But the truth is, speaking in public is an amazing skill to have, and it is probably one of the best skills that entrepreneurs can develop because it shows a level of maturity, it shows a level of confidence, and shows a level to everyone around you that you believe in your product, you believe in everything around you.
Okay, thank you so much. Right. So, for someone who wants to become a better speaker, whether for business, leadership, or personal growth, where should they begin?
There are lots and lots of speaker coaches around. I started my career as a speaker in the Toastmasters. There's a group called Rostrum, which is similar to Toastmasters. And both of those teach you the basic skills of being able to stand up and talk with confidence for 5 to 7 minutes, which is their sort of standard speech length. I think that the set of skills you learn there, peer evaluation, listening to other people, I think those are amazing skills. To go to the next level, there are specifically around the world many, many speaker coaches. I coach a lot of speakers. I coach a lot of people on their speaking and their speaking techniques, whether that's their stage presence, in other words, what do they look like on stage, how do they manage that on stage, through to their just the words they use. The first 30 seconds that people talk about are the most critical. And yet I see a lot of speakers standing up and saying, hello, my name is John, and they've lost the audience already at that point. So there is a lot of skill around speaking, and you can be a good speaker but a bad speech maker, and that's a big difference as well. So it comes down to a lot of the skills, and I'm a big fan of the first 90 seconds, the last 90 seconds, and everything else in the middle doesn't really matter. So what do you do in the first 90 seconds? Catch your audience, and what do you do in the last 90 seconds to keep your audience?
Okay, thank you so much, Ryan. So, after decades of entrepreneurship, investing, and leadership, what is one mindset shift that every business owner needs to make to reach the next level?
I think There are a lot of those. It's not a one size fits all, and that's the challenge with being a leader. I think everything comes down to, there was a saying from the CEO of General Electric many years ago, and what he said is the soft stuff is the hard stuff. The soft stuff is the hard stuff, and what does that really mean? It means that the soft skills, in other words, the skills that you require to deal with people, are much harder to acquire and to master than technical skills. And so I guess the real successful leaders are those who have mastered the soft skills, because technical skill is available. You can buy technical skill, but the skill of being able to deal with people and the soft issues in the business, that's really the difference between successful leaders, successful entrepreneurs, and those who are just ambling along.
Okay, thank you so much. So here is my final question for you. What advice would you give to someone who is standing on the edge of a big opportunity but is afraid to take the leap and dive in?
So the book I wrote called Dive In, Lessons Learned Since Business School, there's a whole lot of things just in the title and what it says in the back of the book. So the title says Lessons Learned Since Business School. I came out of business school at age 26 and I thought I knew everything about running businesses, but I actually knew very little about running business at that point. And so the first thing was to acknowledge our limitations. And I didn't do that at the time. It took me many years to actually do that. So that was the first aspect of it, was the lessons learned since the business school. In other words, business school taught me a lot about the theory. The last 35, 40 years have actually got me into the practical understanding, almost 40 years, of how to be a leader. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, on the back of the book, it says 3 sentences. It says, business is not complicated. Business is simple. And then it finishes off with a line that says, just dive in and adjust your course while you're moving. And that's the biggest challenge to success and entrepreneurship. That people become so married to their idea, their concept, that they won't change course for anything. And sometimes you just have to do that. You have to dive in and say, okay, this isn't working. Let's adjust our course slightly and see how we go. And I think that is the success difference between those who are very successful and those who are average success.
Right, thank you so much, Raya. Thank you for joining us and sharing your incredible journey from overcoming a major health challenge to building businesses around the world. Your story is a powerful reminder that success is not just about achievement, it's about learning, adapting, and continuing to grow. So for those who would like to learn more about your work or pick up a copy of Dive In, Lessons Learned from Since Business School, where can they do that?
So obviously I want people to go and buy it on Amazon, but for your listeners, I'm happy that they download a free PDF version from my website, railbricker.com, and there's a tab on there that says free stuff. And under the free stuff tab, there's a couple tests you can take about your own behavioral style, your own leadership style, as well as downloading a copy of Dive In, Lessons Learned Since Business School.
Okay, thank you so much, once again. I also want to thank all my listeners for tuning in today. You guys are the reason why we are able to do this every day. So do well to check out Raya's work and make sure to connect with him. And you all do have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you, Raya.
Thank you.